So good. All right. So grab a paperback Bible, pass them down to one another. Turn to Mark chapter 10. Those of you at mochurch.tv, page 822 in the house Bibles, or you can download the Bible app for free. So when Bruce Wayne was just a child, his parents were murdered in front of his eyes. Now, I know it's fiction, but you can't really think of a more traumatic experience in anyone's life than to have their parents murdered in front of their eyes while you're a child. And it's this tragic event that becomes really a defining moment and a driving force in the life of young Bruce Wayne, who then, of course, turns into an adult. But there's just nothing more traumatic than that. And following the deaths of Mr. and Mrs. Wayne, eventually one man steps up, and his name is Alfred Pennyworth. Now, there's a series getting ready to come out this summer, actually, called Pennyworth, that's all about the life of Alfred. You have to watch for that on television. And there's this guy, Alfred Pennyworth, is the family valet. He's a servant, a butler, and he becomes Bruce's legal guardian. Now, Alfred's backstory, of course, it's been modified through the years and in different stories being told about Batman, but basically Alfred is depicted as Bruce Wayne's loyal, tireless butler, housekeeper, best friend, surrogate father. It just goes on. And you can't underestimate his value, though, based on the fact that he's called servant. Don't underestimate this guy and what he means to the story. Now, Alfred is the one who helps his master, Bruce Wayne, establish his superhero career. He's the hero maker, really, in a sense, and he helps him sustain that superhero career, too. He's highly intelligent, highly resourceful as a person. Alfred has the skills of a classically trained British actor in his backstory. He's a storyteller. He's a medic. He's a former spy. He's a former British Special Forces soldier. And you could even argue that Alfred is the comedy relief in so many Batman stories. He's the one that drops the one-liner that lightens the mood, or when he needs to catch Bruce Wayne's attention, he'll drop some sarcastic remark pointed toward Bruce Wayne to catch his attention and catch what Bruce Wayne is doing to blow it at the moment. And so Alfred runs the day-to-day operations at Bruce Wayne's manor, the Wayne Manor, and he maintains much of the equipment in the Batcave. And he's also, because he's an ex-special ops dude, he has connections to the intelligence community that help Batman when he's out in the field. Alfred even uses his acting background and his disguise skills to help Batman. Sometimes he impersonates with his acting skills Bruce Wayne on the phone because he's trying to throw somebody off. Other times he coaches Bruce Wayne to give him lessons on how to maintain his cover as Batman. And he also provides first aid for Bruce. I mean, if you've seen Alfred in any movie, any comic book, any TV show, you'll see Alfred suturing wounds and removing bullets, and he even performs arthroscopic surgery and other advanced medical procedures at times. And this is super valuable because it means when Batman is injured out in the field, he never or rarely has to go to the hospital where his cover would be blown and his identity would be revealed. And so Alfred takes care of that for Bruce Wayne. But Alfred, his role goes even beyond that. It goes to a much deeper level, and maybe even what you'd say is the most important part of the character of Alfred is that Bruce Wayne's life and his calling to be a hero, the grind of that battle, it just constantly takes its toll on Bruce Wayne. You see it all the time in his character. Bruce Wayne's life is a life of pain and of loss. His mind can barely handle the level of trauma that he's experienced, and he can't escape this burning desire to be Batman, but he often struggles with that calling and whether he even wants to do it anymore. And there's so many times when it seems like Bruce Wayne just might lose himself or destroy himself in that calling. So the mission beats him up, and psychologically and spiritually, it's taxing on Bruce Wayne. And this is when Alfred is probably the most resourceful, the most valuable. He's always there, forever loyal, constantly serving as Bruce's moral anchor, constantly pointing Bruce back to his moral compass. And at times, Alfred is the one who passionately is enraged at Bruce Wayne for his self-destructive behaviors. There's times where when Bruce is unnecessarily endangering his own health, that Alfred is the one, as his close friend, as his father figure, to speak up and be the one to tell him that he's going the wrong way. Now, as Jim Kruger, the guy in the video we just showed you, former creative director for Marvel Comics, he said in that video, he said, Alfred is someone who takes the raw chaos, the pain in Batman's life, and he helps it be honed into the character who can ultimately save Gotham. Now, what I love about this is Alfred is just such a unique character in the comic books. In our superhero parables series that we've done for years at Momentum, Alfred is a hero maker. He's a servant who goes well beyond just being the butler at Wayne Manor. In fact, and I think this is really poetic, he's often been described as Batman's Batman. Like, he needs that guy. Bruce Wayne needs that guy. So Batman couldn't do what he does without Alfred. Alfred helps Batman win. That's Alfred's role in the story. Now, if you look at Mark chapter 10, let me give you some background here. There's two guys in the main group of disciples that Jesus has. Jesus has many disciples, men and women disciples, but some of them, when they choose to follow Jesus, he says, okay, stay in your hometown, do what you do. Do that voodoo that you do, and stay there. And so they go back. But there's 12 dudes that he lets follow him everywhere, live with him everywhere, camp out with him everywhere. And these 12 disciples are the ones that we just traditionally call the 12 or the 12 apostles. And two of those guys are brothers, James and John. They're former fishermen, and they end up being a part of the main 12. And I have to think for them, as we see their characters develop in Scripture, that I'm sure they're like, man, how did we get so lucky? There's all these crowds, multitudes of people, but Jesus chose us as the main 12. How did we get so lucky? But you also sense that they also say some things and think some things like, man, let's make sure we don't let this 15 minutes of fame just slip away. Like, we get to be around a celebrity, a very powerful person. How can we leverage that for ourselves for all it's worth? And so you see this in Mark chapter 10, verse 35. It says this, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, that's their father, came to Jesus. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Now, this is funny because they're asking for carte blanche. Like, hey, will you sign a blank check and we'll fill in the amount? This reminds me of like a kid coming to a parent like, Mom, Dad, I totally want you to say you'll do this thing for me, okay? But I'm not going to tell you till after I tell you what it is. And you're like, what, am I stupid? No, I'm not going to grant that to you. You tell me what you want first, then I'll tell you if you can have it. Well, that's what Jesus does. In verse 36, what do you want me to do for you, he asked. Verse 37, they replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. Like, so when you become whatever kind of king you're going to become, because we don't understand what you're talking about right now, you're going to have a spiritual kingdom on earth, whatever. Well, when you have your throne, can we sit on your right and your left? Can we have positions of power? Like, dude, we want to be famous. We want to continue to be famous. We want our names to be remembered as the generals for this king. Like, we want to have the power. You have powers. We want to have those powers. I mean, we want to be epic. I mean, we want people to remember who we were and what we did, and they want the glory that comes along with following a celebrity like Jesus. They've seen the power and the fame that he has. They want that too. And I think all of us can relate to that. There's some selfish instinct in all of us. Different levels for different people. And some may have a harder time admitting, but there's this thing inside of all of us that makes us ask, how can I leverage this friendship? How can I leverage this relationship? How can I leverage this position? How can I leverage this opportunity for my own personal gain? Whoa, this is a unique opportunity. They have money. How can I leverage that for me? Man, they have friends. They're popular. How can I leverage that for me? And so Jesus says to them in verse 43, by the way, that's the subtle attitude that real life supervillains are made of. We will never become that big monster probably in a film or whatever, but that's what a supervillain is made of. How can I leverage that for me? Jesus says, verse 43, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. This is his response. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man, that's Jesus, did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So Jesus is saying, hey guys, it's not all about you. Like, I know you want to be a hero, but I want to challenge you to be a hero maker. Like everyone wants to be Batman. Everyone does. But I want you to learn to be Alfred. I want you to have the mentality of Alfred. Whoever wants to become great has to become a servant. They have to become a butler. You want greatness? Look at me. And then he drops the biggest kicker on him. I'm God in the flesh. And I didn't come to have people feed me grapes and fan me in a hot auditorium. We need momentum with new logo fans, don't we? Like, yeah, feed me grapes, fan me. I didn't come for that. I came to be a servant. In fact, the way that you're going to say that I'm so great as a God is I came ultimately to be the servant that would lay down his life as a hero for everyone. That's a hero, but it's a hero maker with a butler mentality. And so Jesus drops this on him, like, I came to lay down my life for others, to serve others by dying on the cross so that other people can win spiritually. Now, I'm not going to lie, when we went through this rebranding process, I fully expected to end up with a logo that I kind of liked. You know, like, I'm kind of picky with that kind of stuff. I'm really picky. So they presented 4 logos at the beginning. I was like, no, I think that's just a font. No, I don't like that. Hated it, living color. And so I was just like, no, I don't like that at all, okay? And so then we got to one that finally in the next process they unveiled, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love it. I absolutely love this new logo. And so I want to give shout outs first to Josh Lazar, who designed, he's the artist who designed our logo. He works for a company called Story Labs. It was started by my friend in college, who I already mentioned earlier in the service, Don Smith, started this company, a college buddy of mine. And man, they have done an incredible job, and they have been Alfred for us. They have bent over backwards to go above and beyond to serve us in ways they didn't have to. And I'm so super thankful for their skills, for starting businesses and being artistic. And so I want to thank them real quick. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Don. Now, when you see this logo, what do you see in the logo? Yeah, you see Ohio. You see an M for momentum. You see, the Ohio emblem, basically. There's kind of 2 Ohios. I'm going to have you awkwardly stare at my chest this whole time. But you see the white outline of Ohio. Then there's the black outline of Ohio inside of it. And that's just basically because, man, as a church, we've always loved Ohio. As our state, we've always just said, man, we love Ohio. In fact, we love our city. And I've always said, you will pry my cold, dead fingers off of Cleveland. God will have to really tell me, you got to go somewhere else, because it would have to be something epic and know it was from God for me to leave this city. And so I'm like, man, we love. And back in the early days of Momentum, sprinkled throughout Momentum were some people who talked bad about Momentum, talked trash, and we were always like, hey, shut up. As a church, we love this city. So you will get an elbow to the throat if you keep talking bad about Cleveland, Ohio. The culture in Cleveland has changed since then, but just several years ago, that's the way it was. Everybody was beating up on Cleveland. I also love that it looks like something you might get at the Cleveland Clothing Company. Like, I love that. It's our logo. But it's dope. It's a church logo that's dope, okay? And so I also love, though, that there are arrows in it, kind of the moving forward. He kind of worked in the arrows right here, and he actually took them and turned them. If you see our parking signs when you come in, that's a piece of our logo that's twisted to be arrows to turn into the parking sign, which I think is creative and just fits with our branding. And I also love, and only a few people have caught this, but it's a talk bubble. And what the talk bubble represents basically is it represents relationships. It represents story, which is so much a part of Momentum. Interaction, community. It represents relationships, and it represents spiritual conversation. It represents the spiritual conversations. Jesus had so many of them that Momentum hopes to set people up for more and more in the future, even if it's something as silly as a logo and a brand. Simple things like that to deeper things than that. We want to set people up to have spiritual conversation with their unchurched friends and loved ones. And we want to get better and better as a church about equipping you and creating those opportunities for you to have those spiritual conversations. One really cool thing is there's a high school senior at our Momentum Twinsburg, Macedonia campus named Steven Swiger. And he did a 3-week internship with us for his high school. And it just ended, and last week he had to give a presentation to his teacher. And he gave this presentation to his teacher, and there he unveiled our new logo. This may have been unauthorized, but he unveiled our logo to the teacher, and he tried to explain in his own words what the meaning is in the logo and how it represented us and the story of Momentum and that kind of stuff. And she said during the presentation, she immediately said it made her feel like she would be welcome at that church and that she could be a part of a conversation. We're like, well, now you are. Boom. I mean, like, yeah, heck yeah. So it's already doing that in simple ways, which is really awesome. Our new tagline. Now, probably the only way you've seen it, we unveiled this stuff weeks ago, the logo and the tagline at our community meetings. We always kind of let things out of the bag a little bit earlier there and get people's feedback and stuff. So when we posted on social media on Friday, our new logo, people were like, spoiler alert. Just means you weren't at the community meeting, okay? And so, yeah, we've been unveiling it, honestly, and we really just kind of wanted to roll out all the swag and signs this weekend. And so we put out the new banner, which is probably the only way you've seen our slogan, tagline, motto, whatever you want to call it. But the new tagline is helping people win. And I want to kind of explain briefly what that means, because we'll unpack it in many different sermons and stuff like that. But this is not a new mission statement. Our mission statement is Momentum moves people forward to love God, love people, and make disciples, students of Jesus, who make disciples. This is a new tagline, which just means when we print stuff and have signs and stuff like that, sometimes we'll put a slogan, a motto on it, like a church for people who don't like church. That's our old one. Or no perfect people allowed. That's an old one. Those things will still be in our verbal culture. We'll still say those things. We still love unchurched people like crazy. That's really what we're all about as a church and all that. But we wanted to kind of trend. Our staff was talking about the idea of saying we kind of want to trend towards something that's a little bit more positive for our tagline, a little bit more positive for our slogan than a church for people who don't like church or no perfect people allowed. And so we really wanted to trend that way. And also we thought that this would create some spiritual conversation still, but be more positive. And so I don't know, how many of you by round of applause saw the outdoor banner, maybe came from that direction? Anybody see it? Okay. More than I thought. I always picture more people coming from this direction. But yeah, it looks awesome, and it has the slogan on it. Looks sweet. But the first natural question that I think that it creates is that it begs the question, helping people win what? It begs that question. You know, it's frustrated some people, even at the community meeting and behind the scenes, like, what it does, it's vague. It does helping people win what though? Exactly. Like that creates conversation. You're already thinking or asking questions or being annoyed. You know, it's the pebble in your shoe. What are you talking? Helping people win what? Okay, church softball games? What? What are people trying to win? And so I love that it kicks off discussion. It begs the question. It creates spiritual conversation, just like our logo talks about. And it takes us back to that talk bubble. And so the simple answer to that question is just this. We want to help people win spiritually. We want to connect people to Jesus, for them to trust Jesus, have a relationship with God, and have the peace and joy and know the unconditional love of God. We want to help people spiritually win. Bottom line, okay? But here's the deal. Once you get your relationship with Jesus right, man, you are better prepared to win in so many other areas of your life. It doesn't guarantee victory. I'm not here to say, oh yeah, you'll be rich, you'll be prosperous, successful, everything will go smooth. Read St. Paul's story in Scripture. It doesn't quite work that way, and that dude was godly, okay? That isn't the way. But it does prepare you to better win in other areas of your life. Relationships, business ethics and principles and all these different things, all that stuff. But it also, if you win spiritually, it better prepares you to deal with the losses you're going to be dealt in life. You're going to face losses, Bruce Wayne. Like there's going to be some pain in your life, some trauma, some stuff that other people in the room couldn't even fathom or imagine. But it is only going to be with the anchor of Jesus, and you winning spiritually, you're going to be able to deal with that stuff. Man, I know from experience, okay, just the fact that trying to be a killer husband and a killer dad. Like I am trying to kill it as a husband. I am trying to kill it as a dad. And I'm trying to lead my family spiritually with the leadership of my wife to lead our kids spiritually. And that is a really difficult task. And I know that's one of the things as a dude I think of for other guys at Momentum who are like, man, I want to kill it as a husband if I ever am one. I want to kill it as a dad if I become one. I want to kill it. But they need community and they need resources and prayer to pull that off. They need people around them in relationship to be able to have that kind of conversation together. So we want to help husbands and fathers, as an example, win. But it starts with Jesus, okay? And so that's what we want to do. So really today, as a church, we're just saying, as a church and as individuals who make up the church, we have to become Alfred. We got to become more like Jesus, serving people, being hero makers, helping people win. Jesus said, if you want to be great, you got to be a servant. That's the posture of Jesus. It's the posture of Alfred. Now, through the years at Momentum, we've used these spiritual metaphors for years now of Batman and Robin. Batman at Momentum represents street language for a spiritual mentor. And we've said for years, everybody needs a Batman. Like I've needed a Batman for specifically prayer. I've needed a Batman for parenting. I mean, all this stuff. I want to be a godly parent. I need a Batman sometimes for that. And then we've also said a Robin is a spiritual apprentice or a spiritual disciple, okay? And everyone needs at least one Robin. Jesus had 12, okay? So everyone needs at least one Robin. But today we're kind of adding to that conversation. If you want to be like Jesus and move forward spiritually, you also need to be an Alfred. You need to be a servant-hearted hero maker who helps the people around you win. That's what your role is if you're Christ-like. And so helping Batman fulfill his or her calling out in the mission field, the community, their businesses, and the home, helping Batman win in those places. Whoever wants to be great among you has to be a servant, has to be a butler. And that especially is the role that our church wants to play, is we want to be an Alfred kind of church to help Batman go out and win in the community. And these metaphors really complement one another. You don't have to choose one of them, Batman, Robin, or Alfred. You need to learn which one you need to be at any given moment. Right now, it is time for me to use my resources to bless someone else, to set someone else up to win. Right now, it's time for me to humbly give instruction to someone who's younger spiritually than I am. Or right now, I need to be Robin and shut up with open hands and listen and say, I need help. I need support. I need prayer. So it's any given moment figuring out which of these do I need to be. But if you're like Jesus, you will be all of them throughout your week, throughout your season, throughout your life. And so aside from our logo and tagline, I really think that eventually one day we will look back, if we're insightful, and we will say, man, it was about 2019 when this happened. The shift started to happen. Now, it's been happening behind the scenes at Momentum in the leadership for several months now. Lots of discussion, lots of planning, lots of rolling out stuff, and still processing all kinds of things that are yet to come. But our staff and our elders, and sometimes just me and Curtis Teal, our campus minister at Twinsburg, Macedonia, we've been having lots of conversations just trying to figure out, how do we help people become better disciples of Jesus, to move forward spiritually, love God, love people, and make disciples who make disciples? And we've concluded we just got to do a better job of helping people with some of these key characteristics that make people look like Jesus. You know, just there's a lot of them, but things like being more servant-hearted, having more spiritual conversations like Jesus had, you know, being more generous, being more prayerful, being more knowledgeable about and obedient to scriptures. And so all these things, and so this year and next year and beyond, we're really hoping to begin offering more and more opportunities like classes or workshops or parenting electives or whatever we can to help people win. And primarily it means spiritually, but man, if you're winning spiritually, then you want to be an awesome parent. You want to be an awesome boss. You want to be an awesome employee, and we want to help you win and be like Jesus in those areas. And it's opportunities for Batman to go out into the community and for you to pour into your Robins, you know, but we want to play the role of Alfred and pour into you. Ephesians 4 in Scripture says this. Listen carefully. It says, Christ gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, the teachers to equip his people for works of service. And that's been in the back of my mind, like, man, me and Curtis saying, we want to better equip you for works of service, to go be Batman in the community, in the workplace, in your homes, in the schools. That's what we want to do. We want to help you win. I want to help you win. First, spiritually, about Jesus. And then in all these other avenues of life. Now, in that video, Jim Kruger said he thinks pastors should be hero makers. He thinks pastors should be Alfred. But I want to broaden your mind just a little bit, because you have to understand, in that video, he knows his audience is pastors. Thousands of them, thousands of pastors around the world, internationally and in America, heard this message. But I want to broaden your mind a little bit about what he would say if he had an opportunity to speak to you this morning. And that is to say, sure, godly pastors can be Alfred. They can be hero makers and servants. But your pastors believe, your elders believe, your ministerial staff believes that godly parents can be hero makers, okay? That godly friends and spouses and bosses and Mo group leaders, they can be Alfred. They can be the kind of people to say, I didn't come to be served, but I want to serve you, set you up to win. I want to do whatever I can to help you. A servant or a servant leader like Jesus is often asking the question, how can I leverage whatever God has put in my hands? How can I leverage that to set someone else up to win? Which is kind of exactly the opposite of the question of James and John, right? They're like, hey, he's got power, he's got fame. How can we leverage that for us? But what if we switched it, like Jesus said, and say, how can I leverage what I have for other people? A few years ago, when I worked for Exponential Conference, a big conference that's for church planters, pastors who start churches, we were having a meeting with just a few of us in St. Louis to plan for an upcoming Exponential Conference. And the guy who leads Exponential, his name's Todd Wilson. He's a friend of mine. He was one of my coaches who helped me start Momentum. He's been a coach, a mentor, and he's just a brilliant dude. Like, it's weird to look at him because he has brains popping out of parts of his skull. He's so smart. That's not true. But he just is just a smart dude. He's brilliant. And so I remember him struggling with a question out loud for just a few people in that meeting. And we were talking, and he kind of, just to give you a backstory on him, he's an incredible leader now. He was already an incredible leader then. This is a few years ago. He was having a huge impact on church leadership around the country and the world. He's the CEO of Exponential Conference. He was being employed and mentored by a guy named Bob Buford, who was one of the basically cable television tycoons, pioneers, a multi-millionaire Bob Buford is. And Todd was being his hands and feet, going around and networking with multimillionaires and billionaires around the country. Todd texted me one time, hey, I'm sitting the row behind LeBron James at a Seattle game. You want me to tap him on the shoulder and tell him to check out Momentum? That kind of stuff. And I'm like, shut up, And so he just was in these really cool positions, but he was traveling around a ton being hands and feet for Bob Buford. And so at that time, he and his wife, Anna, they would admit, man, we were having a lot of problems with our two boys who were in high school at that time. He's like, we were having a lot of problem with that. And he said, and looking back, I just realized the way we were parenting was whack. I mean, it was just, we were not doing well at parenting, and I was traveling way too much. And eventually stepped down from working for Bob Buford, who was in Dallas, and Todd lived in Washington, D.C. at the time. And he just said, Bob, I need more time with my kids. And Bob was a very generous guy. He is an Alfred in so many ways. But his first reaction to lose someone valuable like Todd was like, he was not a happy camper. But eventually came back to Todd and he was like, hey, I still want you to work for me. You just won't have to travel at all. We'll figure this out. And so Todd agreed to work for him without traveling. But at that meeting in St. Louis, Todd said something that I haven't been able to shake since then. He had this little time in this hotel room with just a handful of us where he said, man, guys, I can't help but to think, what if I'm not the primary character in my own story? Like, what if I'm not the guy? Like, we all picture ourselves as the main character, right? What if I'm not the primary character? And he said this, what if it's my son? Like, what if my whole life is about playing a supporting role to set my son up for bigger spiritual impact than me? This is coming from Todd Wilson, who seriously is affecting the church on the globe. What if my story isn't about me? What if it's about my son? What if he's supposed to have an even bigger impact? He's saying, what if I'm not the hero? What if I'm Alfred? What if I'm supposed to help my son win? And as he sat there and unpacked it, I was just like, man, that kind of messed with me. And I just sat and I haven't been able to shake it since. Because what he's saying is, we all go to see Marvel Avengers Endgame, and just naturally, because of storytelling, we assume the role of someone in that film, right? And typically it's a primary character. For me, it's Black Widow. I'm Black Widow, I'm Black Widow, or I'm Captain America, or, I'm somebody, and it's a primary role. It's never someone that plays a supporting role, like some behind-the-scene guy that has one line, a reporter that shows up for a moment, or some guy who gets pushed down in a crowd, or anything like that. That's not what it is. We don't do that. We picture I'm the main character. The story's all about me, right? And that's because we are the kind of people like James and John who like to see our names on plaques and on hospital wings and on awards and things like that. And we want our names to be remembered. We don't want our name to be the 2,000th name going up in the credits at the end of a Marvel movie in the 5th column, 4 minutes into the credits before the second Easter egg. We don't want that. We want our names to be remembered. But what if we, instead of seeing ourselves as I'm the hero in the story, what if we said, I'm the hero maker in someone else's story? I'm going to start to picture myself as the hero maker. What if I'm not the primary character? What if it's my son? What if it's my daughter? What if it's my coworker? What if it's a student at Momentum? I don't have kids. What if it's a student at Momentum? What if it's my Mo Group apprentice? And I'm supposed to leverage everything I have to set them up for success and be Alfred. In fact, Todd Wilson's mentor, Bob Buford, the late Bob Buford, he's since passed away. He was such an Alfred. And one of his sayings that I love is he often said, my fruit grows on other people's trees. He's a multi-millionaire who could make everything about himself, but he's like, how can I set other leaders up to be generous and servant-hearted and win spiritually in the things that they feel called to do as Batman? And man, I got to say, on a personal level, ever since we started kicking around helping people win, ever since I started thinking about that, it's stuck in my brain. I sit in a coffee shop and I see regulars in the community come in or out, or employees that I chat with and joke with all the time. And every once in a while, I can't help but to look at one of them and be like, what does it look like for me to help him win? What does it look like for me? I don't know that I have the resources. I don't know that I know the people. Maybe I can connect them. But what does it look like for me to help them win? Ultimately, spiritually. But to help them be a better friend, parent, whatever it is. How can I serve them and be like Christ, be like Alfred for them? How can I help them win? And basically, I'm daydreaming about this tagline now. And it's affecting me spiritually to want me to have more of a posture like Jesus, like fictional Alfred. In fact, one example of that, we got a guy who's running around here all morning, a blonde dude with a beard named Jeremy Speth, who is just, he's like, I'm not a tech genius, but I'm going to become one for Momentum. I mean, it's really, since the turn of the year, really been his mentality. He fixes problems, set things up. During worship, he was trying to fix the projector. You saw it was crooked, trying to get it fixed. And it's because our monitor, something died with our monitor today that has to be replaced. So we don't have a monitor for me to show pictures on today. Between services today, he's trying to fix those things. He is Alfred. But a few months ago, I was sitting here looking over my sermon notes before the service, watching him wipe off the fingerprints on the screen like Alfred. He's taking care of equipment in the back cave. He's doing all this stuff. And I looked at Jeremy and I thought, he is killing it, but how can I help him win? So one thing I want you to understand is, this isn't saying, hey, we're winning, you idiots out there aren't. Okay? It's not saying that. It's saying there are people I know who are already winning in so many ways, but I'm still like, but I'd still love to help you. I'd still love to serve. I'd still love to be Alfred for you if I can. And that's the mentality I have. And so from that, me and Curtis had a conversation, and we're just like, how can we help him win? And we came up with kind of a gift of sorts that will help Jeremy be better at what he does and to continue to grow in stuff that he wants to grow in. And I was like, man, that really came because I was thinking about how can I help someone win? If you want to be great, you have to be a servant. And I want to be like Jesus. You know, if you might say, man, that's kind of overwhelming, because what if I'm being Alfred and I just don't feel equipped to help someone? I mean, I'm not Dan Smith because I'm someone special. I'm not this person or Jeremy Smith. But I'm just telling you, if you feel inadequate at sometimes to give help or healing or hope to someone, the good news is Alfred felt that way too. You know, that's just the truth. There were times where he couldn't tend to every wound or solve every problem or answer every question. You know, many of you know the storyline of Nightfall, which was in the comic books, Night with a K at the beginning, like the Dark Knight. Nightfall, it was in the comic books, it was in the Christopher Nolan movie trilogy, and then basically in Nightfall, there's a big bad dude named Bane, okay? And Bane breaks Batman's back, like Sammy Sosa. He breaks the bat over his knee, man. He breaks Batman's back, and Alfred says, I can't fix that. That's above my pay grade. Like, that's not one of those things I can keep Batman from going somewhere else for. I have to find some other way to help Batman. I'm not resourced for that. And that's going to be the way with you too. Sometimes you're going to say, this is out of my pay grade. I don't get this. I don't know. I do that too. I talk to people times and I say, you really need to get healthy and to heal. You need a professional counselor. There's no shame in that. But I'm not trained to do that. And so you need to, and let me refer you to someone else, because I can't fix a broken back like that. I just can't do that. I'm a pastor, but that's not my role. And so be encouraged. Whatever it is that you can be an Alfred to, whatever type of person, subculture, whatever it is, we want to help that person win. And so let me just bring this home by saying, you can fill in the blank, helping blank win. For you, who is it for you out in the community, okay? Helping blank win. You can fill it in. I mean, for us, it's always going to be, as a church, one of them is going to be unchurched people. We want to help unchurched people win. People who just aren't connected to, they don't know anything about this. They don't think they'd ever fit in at a church. It's also addicts. We want to help addicts win. But the list goes on and on and on. Teachers and coaches and artists and children and students and foster parents and grandparents and single parents and women and people of color and people who are drowning in debt. It just goes on and on and on. We want to help you win, and we want you to help others win. And I just want to close with what Jim Kruger said in this video. I want to underscore it, and I know people watching like the sermon on YouTube won't have the video before this, so I want to underscore this. One of the things Jim Kruger, the former creative director of Marvel Comics, said in that video was this. He said, Batman's purpose is to go out there, stop crime, and save people. And he's out in the city all the time. All the time. He's in businesses. He's in the community. He's always out there. But when he comes back, sometimes he has to be brought back. There's Alfred who's there to support him, who's there to feed him, who has to help him remember why he does this in the first place, and how he has to let this battle for crime, against crime, not overtake him, where that fight against crime becomes an idol, a false god that will ultimately destroy Batman completely. Who can you play the role of Alfred to in your life? Who can you say, man, maybe my life isn't about me being the primary character. Maybe I'm supposed to help this person win. These people around me win. Jesus said, whoever wants to be great among you has to be a servant. And so be an individual as a part of a community, a church like Momentum that is about helping people win in the name of Jesus. Let's pray.